And finally, AI-generated pornography is rapidly on the rise, according to researchers. You could, as some American teenage boys did recently, put the faces of the women that you know on sexually explicit content and for it to look very real indeed. The Spectator's Sam Leith has written about this for Coffee House this week, and in an industry wrapped up in sexual exploitation, human trafficking, how could this change the future of porn? He joins me now alongside feminist writer and campaigner Julie Bindel. Sam and Julie, welcome to Spectator TV. Now, Sam, for Coffee House this week, you've written about the rise of AI porn. Can you explain what you mean by AI porn and how fast that rise has been?
Well, it's the sort of pornography of the no humans involved variety, where what AI has become really, really good at, it turns out, is kind of creating out of a compost of billions of images. And God knows, the internet is 80% porn anyway. It's got all these billions of images available to it, and it trains the AI to create new images, lifelike scenes and videos involving, essentially completely generated people. Actually, what sparked my interest in it this week was that there was a piece in, I think, the Wall Street Journal saying that this stuff was being used for blackmail, in the sense that people, the sort of old revenge porn thing, people say, I've got an intimate, compromising photograph of you or a video of you having sex. I'm going to send it to all your friends unless you give me a Bitcoin, or I'm going to shame you or bully you with it. And what had happened is that now AI can generate effectively fake nudes of real people by either taking clothed photographs of them and extrapolating from that, or simply kind of seamlessly putting their face onto existing pornographic footage. So it's quite alarming what the technology can do, and according to the Wall Street Journal, it's causing the people on the receiving end of this some real distress.
Now, Julie, you've spent so much of your life campaigning against porn and violence against women and girls. What do you make of this rise of AI porn?
Well, I disagree with Sam that it's a porn with no humans involved. And I'll just give another example of why I think that this causes real harm. And in fact is way more insidious in many ways than we could imagine. A few years ago, I went to the LA Porn Awards. Didn't win anything, but there you go. I was reporting on it. And there was a new product on sale at the time, which was sex dolls, very realistic porn dolls, sex dolls, which whatever you want to call them, made a very like life images of famous female porn actors that men could buy, so that they are just effectively having sex with, violating, abusing the effigy of a real person. And some of the porn actors told me that they found it really distressing. There was nothing they could do about it. Now, if we look at AI generated porn, it's not just being used for blackmail. It's also being used as sex therapy, which is the most abhorrent thing that I can imagine. First of all, the notion that there are these men who are hardwired as so-called paedophiles, which is nonsense. It's a cultural norm, not a hardwired genetic. There's no paedophile gene. So what the AI creators or the AI apologists are saying is that if you actually create child abuse imagery that doesn't involve real harm to real children, these men will be satisfied, as though there are these men that have a craving for sex with children that has to be satisfied in a way that the alcoholic has to have a drink. This is a myth, and it seeks to just normalise the swathes of men that do seek out child abuse imagery, from the kind of schoolgirl in a uniform, whether she's 16, 18 or 14, through to hardcore stuff. And actually, using AI child abuse imagery is like pouring petrol on an already flaming fire, because what in fact it does is desensitizes men, because it usually almost always is men, to the notion that children, even babies, are being sexually abused, because they can justify it by saying, well, of course, I'm not really harming children, but I'm curious, because the way the porn trade works, its money model is to push more and more, harder, raise the bar all the time, so more money is spent. But another thing is, and this perhaps is the most concerning, that men have a ready-made excuse if they are found with child abuse imagery to say, well, of course, these are AI created, or at least that's what I was told. And AI creators of child abuse imagery, or the illegal porn, which would be illegal if it's being done to real women in real time, could also market it as though this is AI generated. So all it does is drive more traffic to the most abusive imagery and absolutely fuels the fire already raging.
Sam?
No, I'm intrigued by that. I don't think I was intending to imply when I said no humans involved that this was, all tickety boo. And I think Julie, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. We're talking about images of child abuse, for instance. I mean, it struck me that there's sort of two ends to this, and and I absolutely yield to you and your expertise on how they connect. One of which is, it seems to me that the real life abuse that takes place in the creation of old school slow food porn, which you have admirably made it your business to find out about and investigate and expose over many, many years. And the other is what you describe, the fuel on the fire, that the imagery helps to cultivate, to normalize, to encourage appetites. And they are often appetites for more and more extreme material, for the taboo. I mean, there does seem to be a thing whereby the more taboo something is, the more people, or some people, are going to find it sexy, and that therefore that's why the sort of baseline constantly moving. And it struck me as a thought experiment, which is what I was writing about in my piece, was, look, if a lot of mainstream pornography, and I'm leaving to one side for a second, if you like, rape and child rape and that sort of really extreme end of it, but if your basic workaday, ordinary vanilla filth, such as it is, were to be generated so cheaply and effectively by AI, would that have, at least at one end of this two-ended issue, the effect of essentially removing some of the market for the more expensive, real person exploitative, traditional porn, if you like, where people are setting up studios, they're trafficking and exploiting very often, the performers, there's all sorts of risk and consent issues, and there's a lot of really, really nasty stuff goes on in the real world as a result. Do you think, leaving aside the question of the appetites that the extreme stuff might fuel, which I'm very much not brushing aside, but leaving that to one side, is there a case that AI porn might help to put a dent in an industry that does an awful lot of real world harm?
Well, first of all, Sam, I wasn't for a second thinking that you were actually advocating for more AI porn. That isn't how I read the piece at all. In fact, I thought it was a very, very carefully argued piece that asked some absolutely crucial questions, and I thought it was very, very nuanced and responsibly written. But first of all, the best business model that the porn industry ever came up with was free porn. Which actually puts a dent in the argument about AI porn, putting a dent in the kind of pay for business. Because what free porn did was it normalized the use of porn for those that were not thinking of themselves at that time as porn consumers. And that included children, so 11-year-old boys, or it included men who aren't disrespectful of women, who do have quite healthy real life sex lives. With real live women that's consensual, but who thought, well, I'll give it a bit of a whirl. And of course, they're not going to put their credit card into the app. They're going to just start off on the free porn. And then, of course, and I don't buy the addiction model. I disagree with those feminists that suggest that it's addictive. I do think that it gets compulsive. And I know the way that the business model pushes and pushes just that kind of more and more extreme. Your algorithms are very carefully monitored. And then you're given something a bit more risque or a bit more close to illegality, a bit more close to looking as though it might be child abuse imagery. And then, of course, the credit cards can come out. So I think that that's a problem with the arguments about AI, because what AI will do is exactly what legal brothels, for example, at the other side of the sex trade, do for the illegal industry. It acts as a smokescreen, it acts as a driver, and it acts as a gateway. Now, not a gateway in the way that people argue that cannabis is a gateway to heroin. I don't buy that at all. What I mean is that because there isn't, and this is my main argument, there isn't such a thing as a paedophile, the medical model that's hardwired to want to have sex with children, or rape children rather. This means that it's a cultural drive, and the more we normalize it, and of course AI will rely, its business will rely on child abuse imagery within the next 5 years. It will be almost totally child abuse imagery. So we're driving more and more men to the more normalized version, and as I say, an excuse that they thought it was all just AI and no child could possibly have been harmed in the meantime.
And Sam, can I come in here, because you also suggest that this is a genie out of the bottle. So do you think that nothing can be done basically to regulate this, to turn back the tide?
It seems to me, if you look at the world's track record, country by country, internationally, in regulating almost anything on the internet, it's pretty poor. I mean, the protocols of the Elders of Zion are still zooming around the internet. Fake news has proliferated rather than disappearing. This whole idea that sunlight is the best disinfectant and a completely open internet will mean that, that everything will be transparent and we'll all be able to see the truth, turned out to be the exact opposite of the truth. So, if we can't get rid of, fake Gandhi quotes, the chances that we can get rid of, artificially generated, which can be done at scale, of course. An AI can produce a, hour and a half long porn film, I'm assuming, or certainly will soon be able to, in a matter of moments, and it will be able to change it, and it will be able to put whoever you want in it, and it will be, the idea that the slow, laborious business of copyright law and takedowns and international jurisdictions is going to be able to handle this seems to me to be a very, very optimistic one.
Julie, you must be very concerned about that, because at least in the current form of the porn industry, you've got these major studios, you've got the major companies, you've got the major websites that you can kind of track. But what we're seeing here is, kids, teenagers, and just your average normal people taking this technology, and they have the capability of creating that.
Well, Sam's absolutely right. The internet is not policeable, but it is very difficult to do so. But there has to be the willingness also. I mean, in countries like Sweden and Norway and various others where, for example, the purchase of sex, prostituted sex, has been criminalised, police have got pretty good at having a look on the internet and tracking down gangs of pimps and sexual exploitation in general. And I think that they could do more than they're doing. And I'm not a kind of ban it all, make it all illegal, because actually we're starting off from the point where there is a proliferation, and we need to think much more closely about the way that we have normalized sexual abuse imagery in general, not just of children, but of adult women and men across the board, and what that means in terms of relationships, what it means in terms of consensual sexual encounters, when in fact sex dolls, porn dolls, are becoming way more normalized throughout that kind of industry. But I just want to flip it the other way around in a way, because we've got AI, obviously because of technological progress, at the end of a spate of pornography being available pretty much everywhere. I mean, porn now actually drives technology rather than the other way around, where we now have permission for more violent, degrading, abusive rape porn, gagging, choking, the kind of porn that is way more kind of acceptable than it was 20 years ago. Partly because the pornographers tested the market by using cartoon imagery. And if we think about Hustler, the infamous cover of Hustler magazine, with a cartoon image of a woman being put headfirst through a meat grinder to depict her as just a piece of meat that was there as, or a set of orifices for men to do what they wanted with, it was extremely effective. There are other images that were tried and tested in Playboy, which I can't even describe on this podcast because it's too distressing, which, because it was cartoon form, they got away with it. Now we're in a situation where AI will be able to go way further. And remember, many men, many consumers of hardcore violent porn enjoy their subject being abused. They enjoy the sadistic pleasure. They want to see them hurt. And the thing about an AI image, an AI model, is they know that there's no pain being felt. And that that is something that will drive them back and forth from AI back to the porn involving real live women being abused on set.
Now, Julie, what about the role of payment systems and the companies like MasterCard, Visa, PayPal, for example? Because I've read that their support and their cutting off of their support for websites like Pornhub have actually really damaged Pornhub's traffic, because the payment companies deemed what they were doing as a bit too extreme, and that has actually had quite a real impact. So is that the way to regulate the industry?
It absolutely could. And in fact, if you look at what happened a couple of years ago with MindGeek and Pornhub, which is one of the sites that MindGeek own, the biggest porn business on the planet, it was really successful when, after a huge outcry from those of us that do campaign to expose porn's reality, the hell of it, where there were countless videos uploaded of girls, not just women, girls being raped and otherwise abused. When that all came out, thanks to the campaigning and the exposure, several big credit card companies bowed to pressure and said, okay, we won't accept payments through Pornhub. It needs to clean up its act, and this is unacceptable. And then, of course, bit by bit, it's crept back so that now the big credit card companies are now accepting payment. So we need to keep the pressure on. But I think practically that's the only thing we can do. There's no resources in policing and there's no willingness. And most police officers, male police officers, are consuming porn, quite frankly. And not only that, but what hurts the pornographers is the cash being, that their revenue is threatened in any way. What turns pornographers on is not the sex, it's the cash. And that's where we need to direct all our efforts.
Julie, you'll have chapter and verse on this, but I remember there was a kind of really shocking thing that broke through about Pornhub, that people started to look into its system for flagging images of abuse, trafficked people, stolen images, rape, all these underage participants. And there was a whole thing where I think they had literally one person for this entire site. You'll remind me if I'm getting this right, who was supposedly in charge of takedowns, and nothing would be brought to their attention unless it had already been flagged 3 times by 3 separate people, regardless of what it was. Is that right? Am I getting that right?
That's exactly right. I can't remember if it was one person or 1.5 people on a job share, but it was a scandal. And I interviewed a young woman who, when she was 15, was gang raped, and that video of her gang rape was up on Pornhub. And it was only after years of her complaining, begging, writing letters, emailing, getting her friends and her parents to do so, that finally a lawyer came on board, sent a legal letter, and they decided to take the video down. And that was some time that she had to fight for that to happen. That should be instant and de rigueur. And they can also, of course, filter. They can vet these videos. In reality, MindGeek, Pornhub, and these big sites, they know that those rape videos drive traffic. They know that they do. There is no such thing as ethical porn. There is some porn that's less bad than other porn genres, but there is no ethical porn and there is no ethical porn industry.
Julie and Sam, that's all we have time for today. Thank you so much for joining Spectator TV.